My name is Stella Whitson. I'm 28, and for as long as I can remember, I've carried a silent title in my family: the disappointment. It was never shouted, never dramatic disappointment, showed up in small, quiet ways. A sigh when I spoke, a glance exchanged between my parents at dinner, a joke from my siblings that always landed just a little too sharply. Growing up, my older brother David was the golden child, the athlete turned successful finance professional who bought a condo before 26. My sister Emily was the sweetheart, polite top of her class, the one everyone was proud to introduce. And then there was me, the artistic one, the phase that never ended. I studied photography, worked unpredictable freelance gigs, and lived in a small apartment with a landlord who believed roof leaks were part of the building's charm. No matter how hard I worked, nothing I did ever shifted the way my family saw me. My mother once told me, "We just worry you'll end up alone." Stella, as if not owning a briefcase meant I was destined for failure. The only person who ever made real space for me was Emily. When we were kids, she used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms with a blanket so we could watch cartoons together on a tiny portable DVD player. Even as adults, no matter how busy she got, she always texted me on my birthday, always checked in after big life moments, and unlike the rest of my family, she actually came to my gallery opening. So when she invited me to her wedding with a handwritten note saying, "It wouldn't be the same without you," I didn't hesitate. I arrived early, hoping to find her before everything became chaotic. The venue was stunning, an old vineyard converted into a wedding space with lanterns strung through towering trees. Guests in polished suits and cocktail dresses drifted across the grounds with champagne glasses in hand. I wore the only formal dress I had, navy simple, a little snug, but presentable. I even curled my hair, which felt like an accomplishment in itself. The first indication of how the day would go came quickly. "Stella," my mother said, sounding surprised, though not pleasantly. "You actually came," I forced a smile. "Nice to see you too." She kissed my cheek, then leaned back to scrutinize me. "You look healthy." In her language, this meant, "You've gained weight." I let it pass. My father arrived next, offering a stiff nod and a handshake he probably gave his dentist. "Hope you behaved on the drive up," he said. "I usually behave when I'm alone," I replied. As always, he didn't laugh. Inside, I scanned the room for Emily, but found David first. He clapped me on the back harder than necessary. "There she is, the Bohemian Bachelorette herself," he announced. "Still using that nickname?" I asked. 10 years later. "Yep," he said proudly. "Some things never go out of style, like your hair. You look like you stepped out of a community theater version of Les Mis." I tried to laugh along because calling him out never helped. David always labeled his comments sibling banter, but there was always an edge to them. He knew exactly where to aim. Then I saw Ethan Prescott, the groom. My parents' pride and joy by association, the man who elevated our family by choosing Emily. On paper, he was impressive lawyer, polished, tall, confident. But every time I'd met him, he dismissed me in a way that almost felt refined. Too smooth to be called rude, but sharp enough to bruise. The moment he spotted me, I saw that familiar smugness in his eyes. "Well, well, well," he said, loud enough to turn heads. "Didn't think they'd invite the family disappointment." My breath caught. Conversations around us quieted. A few guests laughed awkwardly, unsure whether to join in. I forced a polite nod. "Nice to see you too, Ethan." He leaned in, still projecting his voice. "Honestly, I figured you'd skip it. But hey, even starving artists need free food and open bars." My cheeks burned. My father pretended he didn't hear. My mother sipped her wine. David chuckled under his breath. It stung more than I expected, but humiliation was familiar territory for me. I turned toward the entrance, desperate for air, when I saw Emily descending the staircase. She looked beautiful, radiant, her smile lighting up the room until her eyes met mine. Instantly, her smile faltered. She must have sensed the tension. Her steps slowed. Ethan looked at her and, with a loud laugh, said, "Babe didn't think they'd invite your charity case sister." Emily froze. It was the first moment I truly saw something fracture beneath her practiced composure, a flash of guilt. Shock, it disappeared quickly, but it was enough. Ethan turned back to me, jabbed his finger, and ordered, "You don't belong here. Leave." I felt anger rise hot, pressing, undeniable, but I didn't let it spill. I took a steady breath, lifted my chin, and looked directly at Emily. "I will," I said calmly. "But first," my voice carried across the room. Guest leaned in, sensing something seismic. "Would anyone like to meet the woman he's been having an affair with for the last 6 months?" Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan's face turned ashen, and then from a table in the back, a chair scraped loudly as a woman in a pale blue dress slowly stood up. Her name was Vanessa. And in that moment, before anyone spoke, before the truth detonated across the room, I already knew the day was about to unravel in ways none of us were prepared for. If you think everything began with that moment at the wedding, when I exposed Ethan in front of 100 horrified guests, you'd be wrong. The truth started unraveling long before Emily walked into that vineyard wearing white. It began 6 months earlier on a gray March afternoon when I was crouched behind my camera lens, doing the one thing in my life that ever felt solid, photographing people when they thought no one was watching. Photography is a strange profession. At weddings and engagement shoots, couples pose like they're advertising a happiness package. Perfect smiles, perfect angles, perfect futures. But real emotions slip through in the in-between moments when people forget the camera exists. That's the part I've always loved capturing. The cracks, the truth. That day I had been hired to shoot engagement photos for a couple I barely knew, friends of a friend. The gig wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep my lights on and my pantry stocked for at least another week. We agreed to meet in a small, ivy-lined plaza downtown. The weather was cold and windy, the kind of gray where colors look washed out and the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. I arrived early, hoping to catch the plaza when it was quiet. While scouting lighting angles, I noticed a couple sitting in the corner of a cafe across the street behind a fogged window. They looked intimate, close. The man leaned in. The woman laughed softly, her fingers brushing his wrist. It was sweet, tender even. Not the kind of thing I'd normally stare at, but something about the body language pulled at my attention. And then I recognized him. Ethan, my sister's fiancé, smiling like he'd found the sun on the gloomiest day of the month. The woman wasn't Emily. Before my mind caught up, my instinct fired. I snapped a photo, one quick reflexive shot through the window, capturing the silhouette of Ethan leaning toward the woman as he tucked a strand of hair gently behind her ear. The kind of gesture you only make when you believe someone belongs to you. As soon as I clicked the shutter, I regretted it. I wasn't hired to spy on my own family. I told myself it could have been innocent, maybe a coworker, a friend, someone he was counseling through a bad breakup. I didn't want to be paranoid. I didn't want to create problems where none existed. And honestly, the last thing I wanted was another rift between me and Emily. When the engaged couple I was shooting finally arrived, I pushed the whole thing out of my mind, or tried to. But even after I went home and uploaded the photos, that one picture lingered on my SD card like a thorn under the skin. I didn't delete it. I couldn't. Part of me needed it as proof that I hadn't imagined what I saw. Weeks passed. Wedding plans for Emily accelerated. I wasn't involved much, and I assumed that was intentional. Still, she invited me to a family dinner after her bridal shower, a shower I wasn't included in because Mom claimed it was small and intimate. Translation. I didn't fit her aesthetic. Dinner was held in my parents' house, the same house where every childhood memory was etched into wallpaper patterns and old carpet stains. But now it felt like a museum curated only around David and Emily's achievements. The only trace of my childhood was a single photo of us, 3 kids, on the hallway wall, David in a gleaming football jersey, Emily in a perfect little dress, and me in a hoodie with paint stains. My mother used to say she kept it up for symmetry. I always suspected it was really for contrast. The dinner started pleasantly enough. Polite laughter, remarks about catering options, honeymoon destinations, who cried at the shower. But the calm didn't last. It never did around Ethan. "So Stella," he said, swirling his wine dramatically. Still doing the whole starving artist routine. I glanced at Emily, hoping she'd step in, but she kept her eyes on her plate. My mother gave a small, amused snort. David smirked. "I've been managing," I said. "Actually booked a magazine spread recently." David didn't look interested, but he asked, "Which magazine?" "Indie Photography Quarterly." Ethan cleared his throat loudly. "Oh, I thought that folded," he said with false concern. "Didn't it? I'm sure I read that somewhere." "It didn't," I replied. He smiled like he'd made a point. Could have sworn it did. My fork paused midair. That prickling feeling returned, the sense of being cornered in my own family's house, outnumbered by people who believed I had chosen a lesser life on purpose. I clenched my jaw and stayed quiet. Then Ethan chuckled lightly. Honestly, though, it's inspiring. Sticking with something even when it's clearly not working takes guts. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink. My mother's faint smirk, David's amused expression, Emily's downward gaze. No one defended me, not even the sister I loved more than anyone. I left early. No one stopped me. After that, Emily texted less. Excuses about being too busy with wedding prep. But something felt different. Like a door was slowly being shut between us. Then she reached out again, asking me to take her engagement photos privately. Not through my business, just as her sister. I trust you, she'd said. I want them to feel real. I said yes. I would have said yes to anything she asked. We met at a nature reserve at golden hour. The light was gentle and warm, the kind that made everything look like a dream. They arrived late. Ethan scrolled through his phone, uninterested. Emily looked drained. Not physically, emotionally, like the life had been quietly siphoned out of her over months. I asked them to pose. They smiled, kissed, did what engaged couples were supposed to do. But something was missing. No spark, no laughter, no ease. When I asked them to look at each other and laugh only, Emily tried. Ethan gazed at his watch. When the shoot ended, Emily lingered behind as Ethan walked toward the car. Thank you, she whispered. I really appreciate you doing this. Of course, I said gently. Are you okay? She hesitated, just tired. Then Ethan's voice cut through the space. Em, let's go. I've got that dinner with the partners. Her whole face shuddered. She gave me a quick hug and left. That night, while editing the photos, one image froze me in place. A candid I didn't realize I captured. Emily looking at Ethan with a soft, hopeful expression, while Ethan stared down at his phone with a smirk. The resignation in her face broke something in me. I went back to the image of the woman in the cafe, zoomed in, enhanced. A blurry name tag came into focus. Vanessa. I didn't know her, but I found her online. She worked at Ethan's firm. Pretty, young, her Instagram was filled with bright coffee shots and inspirational quotes. And then I found it, the photo that confirmed everything. A wine bar, 2 glasses, a man's hand reaching across the table to hold hers. The same watch Ethan always wore. Caption. Some people make you feel like home. I screenshot it. My hands were shaking. A few days later, I received a security still from a friend who worked at the hotel I remembered from one of Vanessa's posts. Ethan and Vanessa exiting the elevator together, time-stamped. There was no room for doubt anymore. I wanted to go straight to Emily, to burst into her apartment and tell her she was marrying a liar. But something stopped me. She deserved to learn the truth, but in a way that wouldn't make her blame herself or doubt her sanity. She needed the truth clearly, undeniably, publicly. And that moment arrived 6 months later when Ethan pointed at me at her wedding and said, "You don't belong here." He had no idea what I'd been carrying, no idea what was coming. Vanessa standing up wasn't part of any plan. In fact, I had no plan. I came to Emily's wedding hoping we might share a quiet moment, maybe laugh about something from our childhood, maybe feel like sisters again. But once Ethan humiliated me in front of the guests, once he said I didn't belong at my own sister's wedding, the truth rose in my throat faster than my fear could stop it. Still, even then, I didn't expect Vanessa to be there, and I certainly didn't expect her to stand. Yet she did. Her pale blue dress caught the soft lighting of the vineyard hall as she stepped forward, calm and composed, in a way that felt almost surreal. Her expression wasn't angry or panicked. It was resigned, almost gentle, like she had known the truth would surface eventually, and she was simply accepting her role in it. Ethan stared at her like she was a hallucination. His lips parted, but nothing came out. He looked like a man whose world had just dropped out from beneath him. Emily's veil had slipped to her shoulder. Forgotten. Her face was frozen somewhere between confusion and dread. What? What is he talking about? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Vanessa gave me a brief, steady nod, permission, acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. Then she faced Emily with a kind of heartbreaking sincerity. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, she said. Ethan jolted back to life. Vanessa, stop. What are you doing? She didn't even look at him. I didn't know he was engaged at first, she said softly, and when I found out I ended things immediately. But he told me, her voice tightened. He told me he was staying with you only for appearances, that he was ending things after the wedding. He made me believe he was unhappy. "Stop talking," Ethan hissed under his breath, his jaw locked. Vanessa continued, her eyes glistening. "He said you were emotionally distant, that he felt unappreciated, that you didn't care about him. He told me the relationship was dead in everything but name." Emily recoiled, as if the words had physically struck her. She stumbled a half-step backward, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. Ethan reached out as if to steady her, but she pulled away instinctively. "Emily, it's not true," he insisted. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin." He didn't get to finish. On the opposite side of the room, a chair screeched sharply across the floor. Heads turned. A second woman, someone I hadn't seen before, someone younger with sharp eyes and a tight grip on her phone, rose from her seat. She didn't say her name. She didn't need to. She simply lifted her phone, its screen glowing with a photograph. The photo displayed a hotel lobby. Ethan. The woman. Together. A hush fell so heavy it felt like the air itself stopped moving. Ethan's mouth opened and closed uselessly. I don't even know her," he stammered. But Emily's eyes were already hollowing, going blank as the foundation of her world gave out from under her. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stared at her fiancé like she was seeing a stranger. A dangerous one. Then she turned to me. I don't know how to describe the way she looked at me in that moment. There was pain, yes. Betrayal. Shock. But also something unspoken, like she was asking whether I'd known, whether I'd let her walk all the way into the fire without warning. And behind that question, a flicker of something else entirely. Relief. The officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. Guests shifted in their seats. Some whispered. Others simply stared, stunned and unsure whether they should leave or wait for anyone to declare the wedding canceled. No one did. Not yet. Finally, Emily looked away from me and back at Ethan. "Is it true?" she whispered. "No," he said immediately. "They're all lying. They're obsessed. They want attention. Stella has always hated me," she put them up to this. That hit me like a slap. "I didn't even know she was here," I said quietly. Ethan ignored me. "Emily, you know me. You love me. Think about everything we've planned. Everything we've built." Emily's voice cracked. "What did we build, Ethan?" He reached for her again, grasping her wrist lightly, almost desperately. "Don't do this," he murmured. She jerked her arm away. "I'm done," she whispered. And that was it. No dramatic screaming, no storming out with broken glass underfoot, just a quiet, devastating collapse of something Emily had convinced herself she wanted. She turned and walked toward the exit, her train dragging behind her like it weighed 100 pounds. Someone, maybe David, maybe Dad, stepped in front of Ethan when he tried to follow. I didn't see who it was. I didn't see much of anything. My pulse was hammering too hard in my ears. Vanessa slipped away without another word. The second woman disappeared too. Guests scattered in awkward clusters, whispering, glancing in my direction, with expressions that were a mix of shock, pity, and resentment. No one praised me. No one thanked me. No one even approached me. My mother looked at me like I had personally set fire to the vineyard. My father avoided eye contact entirely. David muttered something to his wife about how I should have kept my mouth shut. By the time I got home, my phone was already buzzing with angry messages from extended relatives. They accused me of ruining Emily's special day. They said I embarrassed the family, that I sabotaged the wedding for attention, that I should have told Emily privately instead of making a scene. Even then, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I thought exposing Ethan would feel righteous, vindicating. I thought Emily would be grateful once the shock wore off. Instead, I felt hollow. And then the silence came. Days passed. Then weeks. Emily didn't call. She didn't text. I didn't know where she was staying. I only heard rumors she'd moved back into our parents' house. She'd quit her job temporarily. She was barely speaking. Meanwhile, I fell into a fog. I stopped taking gigs. I let my equipment gather dust. My camera sat on my desk like a reminder of everything I had failed at being a good photographer, a good daughter, a good sister. One night, my mother finally called. Her voice was cold, sharp, accusing. "I hope you're happy," she said. "Emily hasn't eaten in days. She won't talk. You humiliated her." "I exposed a cheater," I said quietly. "You could have told her privately. She wouldn't have believed me. You don't know that." "No," I whispered. "I don't. But I wasn't going to let her marry someone who disrespected her." My mother's voice hardened. "She's family Stella. You don't throw family under the bus." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "Funny. That's exactly what you all did to me." She hung up. That night, sitting alone on my apartment floor in the dark, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because I regretted telling the truth, but because I felt like I had lost everything anyway. It was rock bottom. But rock bottom has a strange way of forcing a person to rebuild. And what happened next, my unexpected rise, Ethan's retaliation, and the quiet war that followed, would change everything. Rock bottom arrived quietly, not with a dramatic collapse, but with small, accumulating silences. Emily's silence, my mother's silence, the silence of clients who stopped replying, the silence of my camera, sitting untouched on my desk. For weeks after the wedding, I drifted through days that felt gray and shapeless, too heavy to move through and too empty to rest in. I woke up, made toast I didn't finish, stared at my ceiling, and wondered if maybe everyone had been right. Maybe I really was the problem. But the truth has a way of refusing to stay buried, even when you're tempted to bury yourself beside it. The shift began with a single email. The photography magazine, the one Ethan mocked so casually at dinner, wanted to feature my urban work in their fall issue. A full spread. I stared at the email for minutes, rereading it, until the words finally registered. Something inside me flickered. Not joy exactly, but a faint reminder that once upon a time I had believed in myself. A day later, a former client reached out. She was launching a startup and needed branding shots. "I love your style," she wrote. "You capture people the way they want to be seen." For a moment, my instinct was to decline. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust anything. But something, maybe desperation, maybe determination, whispered try. So I did. I showed up to the shoot, half expecting to fail. But the moment the camera settled into my hands, something clicked back into place. The world narrowed to light movement, expression, things I understood better than my own family. The photos turned out beautifully. When my client emailed the next day saying they made her feel like she believed in herself again, I felt a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in months. Work trickled in, then poured. Word spread. The magazine feature went live. A creative platform listed me in their 30 under 30 spotlight. Inquiries flooded my inbox. I redesigned my website, hired a part-time assistant, and for the first time in years, I felt momentum. My momentum, not one assigned or dismissed by anyone else. But the universe rarely lets you rise without sending a shadow to test you. Ethan did not disappear after the wedding. If anything, he doubled down. It started subtly whispers among acquaintances. A vague message from someone Emily knew in college saying she'd heard rumors from people at Ethan's firm that I had staged the wedding stunt out of jealousy, that I had manipulated Vanessa, that I had a history of emotional instability. Emily ignored it at first. I did too. Then the online comments appeared. On my website, on my Instagram, on photography forums. Anonymous users writing things like, "Stella Whitson sabotaged her sister's wedding for clout. She photoshops fake cheating pics to ruin people's lives. She's unstable. Be careful hiring her." I wanted to believe it was just internet noise. Trolls, strangers being cruel for sport. But then a potential client emailed me saying they were concerned about recent allegations. That word allegations sent ice straight through me. With help from a tech-savvy friend, I traced one of the anonymous accounts. The IP address pinged, within 10 miles of Ethan's law firm. Not absolute proof, but enough to know. He was trying to bury me. The brother of the woman he nearly married. The woman who saved his fiancé from a lifetime with a liar. His ego couldn't tolerate losing control. But by then, I wasn't the trembling version of myself who walked out of that wedding feeling like a villain. Work was coming in steadily. People were recognizing my talent. I had built a small network of clients and creatives who respected me. I wasn't the invisible sister anymore. I wasn't the failure. Something inside me hardened, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I wouldn't just defend myself. I would make sure Ethan never hurt anyone again. The world thinks only vengeful people seek justice. That isn't true. Sometimes justice grows out of exhaustion, out of losing everything, and realizing you have nothing left to fear. The first unexpected ally was Vanessa. I reached out with a careful, neutral email. I didn't know if she hated me, blamed me, or wanted nothing to do with any of this, but her reply arrived the next morning. "I've been waiting for this." We scheduled a video call. When her face appeared on my screen, she looked healthier than she had at the wedding. Steady, remorseful, but grounded. She apologized again for her part in the chaos, but I told her it wasn't about blame anymore. "I want to make things right," she said. "He lied to me too, about everything." "What do you still have?" I asked. "Everything," she said. And she wasn't exaggerating. She had screenshots, emails, text messages where Ethan mocked Emily, bragged about juggling multiple women, dismissed his colleagues, even manipulated women at work. She had a recorded voicemail of him bragging drunkenly about bending rules at the firm to get ahead. She also had something more alarming, an email he'd accidentally forwarded to her that detailed suspicious financial practices, kickbacks, withheld client payments, off-the-record bonuses. I told her not to send anything yet. We'll need it, I said. Just not now. The second ally came from someone I'd never expected, Emily. We were trying to rebuild. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But she was trying. Weekly coffee meetups, small conversations, tentative laughter. Then one day she arrived at my apartment pale and trembling, holding a printed bill. "It's from the joint accounts Ethan and I never closed," she said. "Why would he have a storage unit?" "A storage unit, unregistered, paid monthly." We went together. The clerk didn't even blink when Emily showed ID. Ethan had used a cousin's name but paid with a shared account. Laziness or arrogance? Probably both. Inside the unit, we found chaos organized into boxes. Old phones, burner phones, flash drives, stacks of documents, envelopes of photos, a printed list of passwords labeled "Don't lose this," like some unhinged mix of paranoia and carelessness. "What is all this?" Emily whispered. "Proof," I said. It took us days to sort through everything, and what we discovered confirmed what both of us had suspected, but never imagined in full. Ethan wasn't just unfaithful. He was manipulative, predatory, and deeply unethical. He had been dating multiple women simultaneously, some barely out of college. He had messages bragging about backups in case Emily ever grew a backbone. He had questionable financial records, undeclared bonuses, manipulated statements. Emily threw up in my bathroom after reading some of it, but when she came out, eyes swollen, she didn't collapse. She said firmly, "Let's destroy him." And that was the moment I knew she wasn't broken anymore. She was reclaiming herself. The third ally came from an unexpected direction entirely. Mr. Halbert, Ethan's mentor, a respected senior partner at his firm. I reached out through his daughter, whom I had done portraits for, and he agreed to meet. He listened carefully, then demanded proof. I showed him one document, just one, the altered financial statement Vanessa had provided. He inhaled sharply. This wasn't personal anymore. It was criminal. "All right," he said finally. "I'm in." From there, everything shifted from emotional chaos to strategy. I treated it like a photography project, structured, meticulous, precise. Folders, timelines, color-coded evidence, labeled audio files. Vanessa gathered testimonies. Emily organized the storage evidence. Halbert provided insight into the legal implications. And I gathered statements from other women, one of whom, Alyssa, said Ethan ruined her career and had been waiting years to speak out. When I asked if she'd go public, she didn't hesitate. I'd love nothing more. Piece by piece, we assembled a case not for court, not yet, but for impact. Maximum visibility, maximum truth. And then we circled the date of Ethan's biggest moment, the Young Lawyer of the Year banquet. He'd be celebrated, photographed, admired. And right there, at his highest peak, when the world thought he was unstoppable, we would dismantle everything he built. Ethan always believed he was untouchable. He built his life around that belief carefully, arrogantly, stacking lies on top of lies, like a tower of cards he thought would never collapse. The irony, of course, was that the collapse wouldn't come from one dramatic push. It would come from small, deliberate removals of support, one truth at a time, one woman at a time, one piece of evidence placed exactly where it needed to be. And by the time part 5 of this story began, I no longer felt like the isolated, overwhelmed woman who walked out of my sister's wedding feeling like a villain. I wasn't working alone anymore. I had a team, allies, women who had been hurt, people who had looked the other way for too long, even one person who had mentored Ethan and now regretted ever believing in him. What surprised me most wasn't how easy it was to build the case, but how many people were willing, eager to help. Hurt leaves a trail, and Ethan had hurt far more people than he imagined. The first phase gathering. The voices he tried to silence. The first step was to speak with the women Vanessa had privately warned me about. She had kept a list, names, phone numbers, rough timelines. Women Ethan charmed, used, manipulated, and discarded the moment they stopped feeding his ego. Many of them didn't answer my first message. Some never answered at all, but a few did. One of them, Alyssa, became essential. We spoke on a Zoom call late one evening while Emily sat beside me taking notes. Alyssa had sharp eyes and a steady voice. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She spoke like someone who had forced herself to become strong because she had no other choice. I lost my job because of him, she said. When I tried to break things off, he told the partners I was unstable, that I'd been inappropriate. I had no power to fight it. The anger that surged through me was cold, steady, and unmistakable. Would you be willing to speak publicly? I asked. Alyssa didn't hesitate. I've been waiting for that chance for 2 years. So I filmed her story myself. Clean lighting, simple backdrop, steady audio. Nothing dramatic, just truth captured with clarity. She recounted every detail: the grooming, the threats, the retaliation. I recorded statements from 2 other women as well, though they requested anonymity. These voices weren't just part of a plan, they were the backbone of it. The second phase, the evidence, Ethan never thought anyone would find. While I coordinated interviews, Emily dug deeper into the storage unit evidence. The unit was a goldmine of stupidity. Ethan had kept burner phones, old SIM cards, screenshots printed in hard copy, stacks of financial documents, notes about cases he wasn't supposed to discuss, photos with dates scribbled on the back, copies of messages to multiple women, and a literal printed password sheet labeled "Do Not Lose." It was almost laughable this man who built his life around manipulation was also sloppy enough to archive his crimes like a hobby. Emily handled the documents quietly and methodically. Pain hardened her determination. When she found a photo of Ethan with a client's barely adult daughter, one of the affairs he hid even from Vanessa, she didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just said in a voice so calm it chilled me, "He's done." We discovered emails showing he funneled clients to a friend for kickbacks, expensed personal vacations as legal consultations, altered financial statements, forwarded confidential documents to his personal email. When we showed these to Mr. Halbert, he read in silence for a long time, lips pressed into a thin line. "This is fraud," he said finally. "More than that, it's stupidity wrapped in arrogance." He looked up at me. "If this goes public, the firm will have to act." "Good," I said. He nodded once. "Consider me officially involved." The plan was no longer just emotional vindication. It was legal consequence. The third phase, constructing the trap. I created a master folder on my laptop and organized everything the way I handled photography projects, systematically, visually, with a narrative structure. Because that's what this was now, a story. The true story of a man who built his life on lies. Inside that folder were subfolders: 1 affairs, photos, timestamps, screenshots. 02, victims' statements, audio/video. 03, financial misconduct, documents, scanned files. 04, internal emails forwarded and authenticated. 05, storage unit materials, phones, dates, PDFs. 06, summary timeline, cross-referenced. I created a printed dossier, too hard. Bound black professional. It looked like something a law firm would present at a board meeting, not something created in the corner of my apartment while my sister sat beside me, labeling evidence. In the front pocket of each copy, I inserted a single-page summary. The pattern of Ethan Prescott, a chronological breakdown of manipulation, infidelity, and fraud. 3 dossiers were made. 1 for Ethan's law firm, 1 for the press, 1 for Ethan himself. The final phase was timing. The fourth phase, choosing the perfect moment. Ethan had recently been nominated for the Young Lawyer of the Year award. Not surprising, men like him always received praise right before everything came crashing down. The banquet would be held at a lavish downtown hotel ballroom attended by lawyers, judges, reporters, board members, and politicians. The audience he valued most, the audience he craved, and the audience who needed to see him for who he truly was. I booked a camera crew under a fake media production name so no one would question their presence. Emily bought a dress, not something dramatic, just something simple that made her look strong. Vanessa arranged her travel quietly. Alyssa cleared her schedule. We were all moving in the same direction, each of us a different part of the storm gathering over Ethan's perfect life. The night before the banquet, Emily and I sat together in my apartment, the dossiers laid out in front of us. She traced the edge of hers with her thumb. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think he was the best thing that ever happened to me." "You know better now," I replied. She nodded. "I'm not scared anymore." Neither was I. Because for the first time since this nightmare had begun, I knew exactly what I was doing. I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't just surviving. I wasn't trying to earn approval from people who never planned to give it. I was standing up for myself, for my sister, for every woman Ethan had harmed. And by the time the banquet doors opened, the next evening, everything was in place. Ethan had no idea that within moments of stepping on stage to accept the award, he cherished so deeply, his entire life would implode publicly, irrevocably, and spectacularly. The ballroom shimmered like a scene from a movie. Golden lights polished glassware. The low hum of conversations carried by lawyers who loved the sound of their own intellect. Anyone who walked into that room would have assumed greatness was about to be honored, a rising star crowned. And Ethan Prescott, dressed in a perfectly tailored tux, carried himself exactly like the man he believed himself to be untouchable. Emily and I entered quietly through the back, blending into the flow of guests. She wore a deep emerald dress that made her look calm, steady, and heartbreakingly determined. I carried my camera, but tonight it wasn't for hire. Tonight it was for evidence for history. The plan was simple in structure, devastating in execution. The moment Ethan began speaking, the screen behind him would display the first image. The whistleblower file would trigger itself. The dossier would have already been delivered. And once the truth began unspooling, nothing, not even Ethan's well-rehearsed charm, could stop it. He stepped onto the stage like he owned the moment. The room hushed. Photographers angled themselves. Reporters lifted their phones. A spotlight warmed his face. He accepted the heavy glass award with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed this victory in his mind 1,000 times. "I'm honored," Ethan began, voice smooth and practiced. "Truly honored. This award represents not only my work, but the values I've always believed in: integrity, perseverance, and leadership." I felt Emily's breath catch beside me. Integrity. Leadership. The hypocrisy was so thick it almost suffocated. Ethan continued, pacing his words like a seasoned speaker addressing a courtroom. "To every young lawyer who has been told they're too bold or too ambitious, keep going. You'll prove them wrong." A small scoff sounded near the front, Alyssa. She sat with Vanessa, both of them watching him with expressions that were neither angry nor emotional, just ready. "And as I accept this award," Ethan said, "I want to thank my mentors, my colleagues, and my—" Flicker. The projector behind him lit up. At first, a faint glitch, just a tiny interruption in the seamless flow of the evening. Ethan barely noticed. But the audience did. Dozens of heads turned, phones lowered, eyebrows lifted. Then the screen sharpened into a full image. A black and white photograph. Ethan, in a hotel lobby, arm in arm with Vanessa. The room fell silent. Ethan stiffened. He turned slowly toward the screen. "What is that?" his voice faltered. Before he could finish, the next slide appeared. A collection of text messages, his messages. Demeaning, cruel, manipulative, time-stamped, screened, and authenticated. Messages to Vanessa, to the woman from the wedding, to 3 others. Messages where he bragged about keeping backups. Messages where he called Emily boring and useful for appearances. Gasps spread like wildfire. People leaned closer. Some exchanged stunned looks. Others stared slack-jawed. "Someone turn that off." Ethan snapped, panic bleeding into his tone. "This is a joke. A hack. Someone is trying to sabotage me." But the AV technician didn't move. He simply shook his head, hands raised. "This file was pre-authorized," he said. "We were told to run it." By who? By us. But he didn't need to know that. The next slide hit harder. Financial documents, graphs, showing falsified client kickbacks, emails he'd altered off-the-record bonuses. Then a highlighted excerpt from the memo Mr. Halbert had forwarded to the senior partners, pending review of ethics violation. Evidence of internal misconduct. It was the memo that triggered everything. And finally, the audio file. Ethan's voice crackling through the ballroom speakers. "I don't care if she finds out. Emily's too nice. She won't leave. Worst case, I make her think it's her fault." A collective silence settled like a blade. Emily stepped forward then, not loudly, not dramatically, just with quiet, unstoppable purpose. The sound of her heels clicking against marble echoed through the ballroom. Every head turned. Ethan's face drained of color. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he choked out. She stopped halfway down the aisle, facing him with a calmness she hadn't worn since childhood. "Watching the truth come out," she said. "This isn't real," he insisted desperately. "They're framing me. They want revenge. I can explain everything if you just come with me." She took a small step back, like even his shadow was something she refused to be near. "You called me dead weight," she said quietly. You told other women I was too boring to notice your cheating. You manipulated them. And when Stella exposed you, you tried to destroy her instead of apologizing. Ethan tried again to reach for her. She didn't move. She just looked at him with an expression that was both heartbreaking and resolute. Alyssa stood up next. You ruined my career. Then Vanessa, you lied to everyone. Then a third woman. You told me you were single. Voices rippled across the room. It was as if the entire ballroom inhaled the truth and began exhaling it all at once. Ethan grasped the podium, knuckles white. None of this is illegal? That's when the final slide appeared. A document with his signature tied to financial misconduct that could be prosecuted. An internal memo from the firm dated 2 days earlier, initiating formal investigation. Mr. Halbert rose from the front row, holding his dossier. This is the truth, Ethan, he said, his voice carrying through the room, and I regret ever trusting you. The MC approached, gently laid a hand on Ethan's shoulder, and whispered something none of us heard. Security moved in. Ethan protested, pleaded, swore he'd sue everyone in the room, but it didn't matter. His voice was swallowed by cameras flashing, lawyers murmuring, and the hollow silence of a life collapsing. They escorted him out of the ballroom, not in handcuffs, not yet, but destroyed. The aftermath, what remains. The screen faded to black. The room slowly resumed breathing. Reporters rushed outside to file early headlines. Lawyers whispered in tight circles. Some guests looked shaken. Others looked relieved. A scandal had been born right in front of them, and none of them could deny what they'd seen. I turned off my camera and finally looked at Emily. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She looked free. Are you okay? I whispered. I will be, she said. Then she looked at me with a small, bittersweet smile. Thank you. The next morning, headlines exploded across every platform. Award-winning attorney exposed an explosive fraud and infidelity scandal. Multiple women come forward after shocking banquet reveal. Anonymous source uncovers widespread misconduct by rising star lawyer. The best part, I wasn't mentioned once. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Ethan was placed on unpaid suspension. Later charges followed: document forgery, financial misconduct, and more. The firm scrambled to distance itself. His career was over. Emily called me often. We had dinners, just the two of us. She smiled again. She joked again. For the first time in years, she looked like herself. And one night after finishing a shoot, she texted, "You were never the disappointment. You were the only one who saw clearly." Those words meant more to me than any award I could ever win. People think revenge is about destroying someone else, but really it's about reclaiming yourself, your voice, your truth, your place. So now when anyone tries to tell me I don't belong, I know exactly what to say. Then I'll build a place where I do.